You're listening to The Tom Daniel Show, and I'm your host, Tom Daniel. All right. Let's unpack this one. I picture a secluded forest, right? I mean, way out in the middle of nowhere, and a huge tree falls. Big crash. Does it actually make a sound if there's no one out there to hear it? It's that classic old question, right? If a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? And that question always seems so stupid to me. Well, in this episode of the Tom Daniel Show, you will get a definitive scientific answer to that question. And it all has to do with acoustics. And maybe by the end of the show, you might hear things a little bit differently. Also, I divided all of this material up into 2 separate podcasts, and trust me, you'll thank me later. Acoustics is defined as the scientific properties of sound, and since you're hearing this podcast right now, well, that means sound is happening. I want to get deep into the nuts and bolts of sound. I mean, what is it? What are the components? What's necessary for sound to work? How does it work? How do you stop it? I want you to have a solid grasp of sound. And in this episode, I'll dive down the rabbit hole and dig a lot deeper. Now, before I actually dive in, though, I already feel like an idiot because earlier I said acoustics is defined as. Now, even though the word acoustics ends in an S, which usually denotes a plural, this is different. Acoustics is actually singular. Now, the properties of sound that are accepted in science were mostly established by the ancient Greeks, particularly Aristotle and Pythagoras. Of course, they didn't invent sound. They were just the first we know of that figured out how it works and explained it. Hey, wait, back up a second. Wasn't Pythagoras that math guy? Triangles or something? Yeah, there's kind of a freaky connection between music and math that all started with Pythagoras, the math and triangle guy. Now, obviously, the Greeks didn't have sophisticated machinery to test their ideas, so they mostly just thought things out, and only later were their ideas verified by advancing technology. For example, Pythagoras established all the mathematical ratios involved in the intervals between pitches, which everyone accepted for centuries to use in tuning, but they weren't actually scientifically verified until the invention of the strobe tuner in the 1930s. As it turned out, Pythagoras' math was, of course, dead-on accurate. Hey, by the way, why did Pythagoras hate to argue with triangles? Because they were usually right. Aristotle was the one to identify the 2 non-negotiables necessary for sound, vibration and a medium. Now, something has to vibrate to make a sound, and it must vibrate into something, some kind of medium. Since I'm talking, then my vocal cords are vibrating. Air is the medium with which we're most familiar because we live in air. However, water, metal, wood, they all conduct sound, but we don't live there. So our observations about sound mostly pertain to air. And do you remember that old movie, Alien? The tagline for that movie was, "In space, no one can hear you scream." And that's actually correct because there's no air in space. Space is silent. Oh, plenty of things can vibrate in space, but remember, that's only half the equation. Without air or any other medium in space, there can be no sound, no matter how intensely something vibrates. That means when they blow up the Death Star yet again in Star Wars Episode 19, you would definitely see the explosion, but you wouldn't hear it because there's no air. Yeah, but Hollywood doesn't work that way. Big explosions get big sound effects, even if they happen in the vacuum of space. Hollywood knows that when you see a boom, you want to hear a boom. Magic over science, I guess. Hey, but wait, I remember seeing something about NASA releasing songs, things recorded in deep space. How does that work? Are they getting recordings from the aliens now? Well, it's a process called sonification, where NASA takes raw astronomical data and turns it into artificial sound. Now, the raw data isn't anything you can hear. It was captured as plasma waves, X-rays, infrared images, etc., but translated into sound. They do this because sometimes you can hear patterns in data that you can't see, and it helps. Cold data becomes cool sounds. But there are no cosmic karaoke bars out there yet, not that we're aware of. So if sound needs two things to happen, vibration and a medium, then sound may be stopped by removing either one of them. Sucking all the air out of the room is a little impractical. So the usual method of stopping sound is to stop the vibrations. I mean, if you push a key on a piano, a string vibrates. You stop the string from vibrating, sound stops. So how do vibrations in the air make sound? Ha ha ha! They don't. They make fluctuations in air pressure, which your brain interprets as sound. That vibrating string on the piano is actually not making a sound. It's just vibrating. And the vibrating causes the air pressure around it to increase and decrease rapidly as if carried on a wave. And when those rapid fluctuations in air pressure hit your ear, they cause your eardrum to vibrate. And your eardrum vibrates against those teeny tiny little bones in your middle ear, which vibrate against the cochlea and the fluid in your inner ear. Those vibrations in the fluid of your inner ear are then converted into electrical signals that travel along an auditory nerve to your brain, where your brain translates the electrical signals into something you can understand: sound. Our brains are constantly acting like a decoder, basically. The physical vibrations are the raw data fed into your brain, but the actual experience of sound, music, laughter, the wind, that happens entirely inside your head. Sound is subjective. And that's the tricky part. Vibrations are not sound. Fluctuations in air pressure are not sound. Electrical signals are not sound. Sound is not anywhere outside your brain. It's inside your brain. Your brain translates vibrations into sound inside your brain. Therefore, sound is your brain's interpretation of incoming physical raw data. So, if a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, based on everything we've just discussed, no, it does not. Oh, it makes vibrations. Oh, plenty of them. Probably very intense vibrations with lots of air pressure disturbed all over the place. But without an ear and a brain, there's no sound. Now, it doesn't have to be a human ear and a human brain. I mean, birds, mammals, amphibians can all hear, and most insects and reptiles can hear too. But vibrations don't become sound without a brain to translate them. If no one is there, there's no brain handy. Therefore, no sound. Probably a huge crash, plenty of vibrations, no sound. All right, hold on, wait just a minute, whoop, back up there. What if someone placed a recording device in the woods near that tree before it fell? What would that record, huh, Mr. Big Shot? Isn't that sound? And can't you hear it on the playback later, even though no one was there when it fell? But when we come back, we'll take a look at all those questions and more. You're listening to The Tom Daniels Show. We'll be right back.
What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show.
Welcome back to the Tom Daniels Show. Hey, Mary Mac, wasn't that like a Greek modal song? It was, wasn't it? All right, awesome. Merrimack is the world's most perfect band. Now, we've been talking about acoustics and that age-old question of if a tree falls in the woods. That's when an excellent question appeared. What if a recording device had been placed next to the tree before it fell? What would it have recorded, and what would you hear on the playback? Now, to answer those questions, let's talk a bit about how recording devices actually work. You might be surprised to know that microphone technology goes all the way back to the 1870s, before there was electricity. The early microphones were an acoustic recording horn, which looked like a gigantic cheerleader megaphone. Now, the sound went into the fat end of the horn and came out the tiny end. Positioned at the tiny end where the sound came out, there was a little diaphragm attached to a needle. The diaphragm vibrated with the sound, and the needle etched patterns into a revolving disc or cylinder. It was directly carving the vibrations into a physical medium, and it was all purely mechanical. No electricity was even needed. To hear it back, you reversed it. A needle would trace the etched grooves, causing the diaphragm to vibrate into the same acoustic horn. But this time the sound went the other way, into the tiny end and out the big fat end, getting amplified along the way. The acoustic horn acted like a microphone going in one direction and a speaker going in the other direction. Pretty ingenious. The electric recording microphone was invented in the 1920s, and the technology was basically the same as you'd find in a telephone. Sound vibrations were converted into an electrical signal through transduction. That electrical signal could travel down a wire where, at the other end, the speaker converted it back into air pressure vibrations, which we perceive as sound. A recording device doesn't actually hear anything. It just captures vibrations and converts them into electrical signals. Wait, that somehow sounds familiar. Oh yeah, that's the exact same process your ears are using. The cochlea in your inner ear convert the mechanical vibrations it receives into electrical signals, and that's what travels through your auditory nerve to your brain, electrical signals. Your brain, however, it won't convert them back into mechanical vibrations like a speaker. Instead, your brain just directly reads the electrical signals as sound. So, if you placed a recording device in the woods and the tree fell next to it, what would it record if you're not there? The same thing it always records, whether you're there or not. The vibrations converted into electrical signals. The presence of a human is irrelevant to the recording process. Vibrations are converted into electrical signals and stored. Reversing the process converts the electrical signals back into vibrations, which go into your ear, get converted back into electrical signals, go into your brain, and interpreted as sound. The recording only captures the blueprint for sound, not actual sound. You still need your brain for the actual experience of hearing a tree fall. Mind blown. All right, now let's switch gears a bit, talk about the foundational principle of pitches being high or low. And we're back to Pythagoras again. He really got around. Pitch means the highness or lowness of sound, and Pythagoras recognized the direct mathematical relationship between pitch and the length of an object. He realized that long things vibrate slower, producing lower pitches. Short things vibrate faster, producing higher pitches. Think about a baby xylophone. The metal bars at the left end are longer and produce lower pitches, and as you go to the right, the bars get shorter, produce higher pitches. That's because short things vibrate faster and sound higher, while long things vibrate slower and sound lower. Pythagoras. Am I right? By the way, why are the low notes at the left end of the piano and the high notes are at the right end? Is there a specific practical reason for this arrangement? We don't have any ancient instruction manuals telling us why, but I do know that the tradition of it started with the Greeks, as all of their ancient harps and lyres have the same layout, low on the left, high on the right. Now, since my wife plays piano, I asked her about it. And she told me that the high notes require more dexterity than low notes. Therefore, since most people are right-handed, it was only natural to put the high notes in the right hand. Maybe so. I think she might be onto something, actually. It definitely makes sense ergonomically. In the 20th century, technology advanced enough to allow people to count the actual number of vibrations per second, which scientists call frequency and are measured in hertz. Hertz means 1 vibration per second. That's 1 hertz. Now, musicians call it pitch, but it means the same thing. The most common reference pitch used today for tuning is A440. That means that something is vibrating 440 times per second to produce the pitch known as A. Now, the cool thing is it doesn't matter if it's a string or a magic marker or a brick. Anything that vibrates 440 times per second will produce the pitch known as A. Here's what A sounds like. Was Pythagoras right about the math ratios? Oh, you bet he was. He was Pythagoras. If you go an octave higher than A, you get the next A up, which vibrates at 880 times per second, which is exactly the 2-to-1 ratio Pythagoras predicted. Well, how about an octave lower? Well, that's half, 220 vibrations per second. There are 8 A's on a standard piano keyboard. There's A440 as a standard tuning reference, with 3 more A's above that one, all at a 2-to-1 octave ratio as Pythagoras predicted, each one doubled. There's A440 that we start with. The next one up is 880. Above that is 1760, and the A at the top is 3520. All of them multiples. And then there are 4 A's below 440, each one cut in half. There's A220, then A110, then A55, and then A27.5. Here's what all 8 A's on a piano sound like going from lowest to highest. Pythagoras was definitely the man. He worked out the exact mathematical ratios of all the pitches in an octave based on length 2,500 years ago. A perfect fifth is a 3-to-2 ratio. A perfect fourth is a 4-to-3 ratio. Wow. His tuning method was known as Pythagorean tuning, or just intonation, or natural tuning, take a pick. As I mentioned, we use A440 as a standard tuning reference, but was it always this way? No, absolutely not. The ratios Pythagoras established between pitches has always remained constant, but the actual reference pitch for A has drifted around through the centuries. This means that Bach's A wasn't the same as the Beatles' A. In the medieval era, the A was at about 505 hertz, which is a lot higher than it is today. Therefore, in order to properly play or sing music from that time, musicians should actually retune higher. They never do. It's too much trouble to do that. In the Renaissance, A fluctuated between 370 hertz and 470 hertz. Another way of saying that same thing is that there was no tuning standard in the Renaissance because, they were all over the place. It was a sonic free-for-all back then. In Bach's lifetime, during the Baroque era, the tuning fork was invented, and A became about 415 hertz, which is still about a half step lower than what we're used to today. Therefore, if we could hear Bach's music played as it was in 1725, it would sound much lower to our ears than we're used to hearing it now. In Mozart's lifetime, the tuning standard drifted a little higher to about 421 hertz. Still lower than today, but higher than Bach. In Beethoven's lifetime, the standard pitch went up some more to A440, which is the same as today, but by the end of the 19th century, it drifted back down a bit to A432. This means that all of those spectacular late 19th century operas should be performed at a slightly lower pitch than they are today. That's intriguing. Most of all the variations in tuning standards were caused by differences in geographic regions. France and Germany were higher than Italy or something like that. The variations could also be caused by differences in institutions, church denominations versus government court functions versus specific opera houses. And they were definitely caused by differences between instruments and singers. Singers generally prefer lower tuning to save their voices. Hey, by the way, how do we know what tuning was used 500 years ago? Well, because the instruments still survive, and the ones that are preserved are still in the original tuning, especially organs. Pipe organs have the same tuning they were built with, so they represent kind of a sonic archaeology, a tuning snapshot into the past. Finally, in 1955, an international conference established A440 as the universal tuning standard, which is relatively recent in the grand scheme of things, and that's what all of us have been using ever since. Now, Pythagoras might have established the mathematical ratios of the pitches 2,500 years ago, but it took a long time for those pitches to become standardized. By the way, did you know that Pythagoras refused to eat beans because he believed they contained the souls of the dead? Yeah, he apparently had his own cult of goofy followers who believed that, and lots of other weird stuff, and they ticked off a lot of people with their weird behavior. It finally boiled to a head when an angry mob had enough of him, and they chased Pythagoras and cornered him at a bean field of all places. Now, he could have escaped, but he didn't, because he didn't want to touch the beans or trample somebody's dead soul or something. So the mob caught him and killed him right there. Maybe the only person in history to die for legume beliefs. And then I guess his soul went into a fava bean with a nice Chianti. Well, thanks for taking this trip with me today into acoustics, and stay tuned for the second part of this material, where you can look forward to the celestial harmony of 432, the ranges of human and animal hearing, sonic booms, decibels, resonant frequencies, a ghost story, and the infamous brown note. This has been the Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening, keep learning.
Keep listening, keep learning, the Tom Daniel Show. Keep listening, keep learning, the Tom Daniel Show. Take a break from your usual routine and tune into the Tom Daniel Show. You'll discover the world of melodies and stories that you might